Following the Toronto Maple Leafs making a sneaky signing acquiring Alex Nylander, the truth has been revealed behind the signing and some shocking details have emerged regarding the other teams in the NHL's pursuit of the forwards. I'm going to break all that down in this episode, but before we do, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that button. It would mean the world to Darius and myself as we're on the road to 12,000 subscribers. So Darius, a lot to go over today, and specifically regarding Alex Nylander, a very good signing. We've had some time now to think about the signing. We'll discuss that a little bit more in depth, but some wild details have been revealed about some other teams, specifically the Blue Jackets, pursuit of Alex Nylander, and GMs around the league, fans, reporters are very surprised that the Leafs were able to land this guy on the deal that they did, which was, of course, the AHL deal. And it seems like the Leafs sort of robbed the NHL here with this contract. And again, it could end up being a deal where Nylander doesn't play too much in the NHL, or it could end up being one of the better contracts they've signed. Let's just dive right into it. Obviously, we know that yesterday they signed Alex Nylander to a one-year AHL contract, so he can't go to the NHL without being converted to an NHL deal. But that actually works in favor of the Leafs because, like we discussed yesterday, he obviously doesn't have to take up a roster spot at the 50-man roster spot. But you can see this here from Leafs latest. People around the NHL were surprised when new Blue Jackets GM Don Waddell chose not to extend an offer to Alex Nylander despite his strong performance with Columbus at the end of the season. And a lot of stuff came out basically saying, not just from Leafs fans, just from fans around the NHL, saying they were very surprised that the Blue Jackets didn't give an offer to Alex Nylander, or that any other team didn't want to sign Nylander. And I think at this point, maybe he just wanted to play with his brother or be around his brother in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, which may have led to a fleecing for the Leafs here.
I think you nailed it with that. I think he wanted to play in Toronto. We saw the workout videos, and he probably wants to rejuvenate his career a little bit, and playing in Toronto beside his brother is a great way to do that, right? And I think he's going to end up on the Leafs at some point. I slept on it, and I'm like, you know what? This is a great deal for the Leafs. And I think at one point during the season, he's going to end up in the NHL, and he's going to help in a big way. I saw the comments too, right? People are like, why weren't other teams interested in this player? I think that they were. I'm surprised that Columbus wasn't, especially because they could use a player like Alex Nylander. But I'm sure across the league there was some interest, and he probably decided, hey, listen, I'll sign in Toronto and play with the Marlies to start the year, or maybe not even, right? He could end up in the NHL to start the year still. And I'll come play with my brother. And like we were talking about, like there's a lot of extra motivation there for him, right? And playing in Toronto. And so it's going to be very interesting to see this season how that shakes out, because obviously he is to start on an AHL contract, but again, across the league there are some question marks as to why didn't somebody else pick him up, right? So there is a lot of value to this player, I think, more than people think.
Yeah, and as these reports started to flood out regarding I guess from the perspective of the Blue Jackets or really any other team, it started to become more and more clear that maybe he just wanted to come to Toronto with his brother. And we saw a few days ago, we made a video kind of foreshadowing this move. We ultimately were right about the move, about him coming to Toronto. He was working out with Nylander, or I guess he was working out with William Nylander, Alex Nylander was, and it just seemed like the writing was on the wall for it to work out. And I do think that maybe under the table there's some sort of guarantee that maybe he'll at least get a chance at the NHL at some point this season, or that they're planning to sign him down the line to a deal. He's only 26 years old, like we'll get into in a minute. But you can see this here. Former AHL coach in Scranton, JD Forrest, mentioned that Alex has loads of talent and offensive skills, but needs to round out his game. He said he can certainly do some things not everyone can. Specifically, he's obviously, JD Forrest is referring to his goal scoring ability, which has been his calling card throughout his entire career, professional career, as prospect, everything there. But again, he's only 26 years old, 11 goals in 28 games. We spoke on this yesterday. The more I think about the signing, the more it makes sense. But also the more I think about it, like we keep mentioning, the more I'm confused that no other teams wanted him. And no reports have come out saying that he only wanted to sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But if you do some reading between the lines, it's hard to believe that not another team gave him an NHL option or a two-way contract or something along those lines where he could at least get a chance to start the season in the NHL, because there's a lot of teams that could use goal scoring and that don't have a very good bottom six. And the Leafs are one of the teams that have an okay bottom six, but there's definitely some teams out there that have a worse bottom six where Alex could have had a much bigger opportunity and a bigger role to play in the upcoming season. But I don't know.
There's a lot of teams around the league, and I'm reading between the lines, and this is like speculation, but there's a lot of teams around the league that could use this player and probably reached out, right? But I think that, like you said at the beginning of the video, his brother had something to do with this. Hey, come to Toronto, even if it's an AHL deal, even if you start with the Marlies, come here, use the resources, right? Get better, get a more well-rounded game, work on your neutral zone, work on the defensive zone, right? Because he is pretty abysmal at that, besides the shot and the playmaking ability. Like the speed's there, all that. The offensive side of the game is all there. It's the rest of the game, the package that hasn't followed him, right? So I think it was a lot to do with his brother. Come here, use the resources. You can hang out with me, right? They'll probably live in the same area or something. The practice rink for the Marlies, at, the Scotiabank Arena and Ricoh Coliseum or Coca-Cola Coliseum now is not too far from each other, so they'll see each other all the time. And if he ends up on the NHL team, he can work on things with his brother, because William, I should say, started playing on the PK last year too. So he's adding certain things to his game as well. So I'm sure it had a lot to do with, hey, come play with me in Toronto, even if it's not on the NHL team. Use the resources that are available in this organization to your advantage, become a more well-rounded player, and maybe you end up on the same team as me, or maybe you'll just better your career and you can sign somewhere else, right? So yeah, I think he may not stay a Leaf, but I think he's going to use all the resources and his brother's advice here. So he'll probably find success and end up on the Leafs at some point this year.
Yeah, and that's kind of what JD Forrest had to say when he mentioned loads of talent but needs to run his game. You mentioned he's very bad defensively. He has a lot of things he needs to improve in his game. The goal scoring is there, and if he can come to the Leafs, and it kind of makes sense to start him at the AHL anyway, let him improve those things, refine the game, and if he knows that he's going to come up to the NHL if he plays well, because the Leafs do have some open spots there in the bottom six that, not necessarily wide open, but he could definitely outplay some of the current players that are in the bottom six. He could come up and be that guy if he can improve. And then if he also improves, obviously, I mean, he has the ability to be a very good player in this league. We mentioned it in the video yesterday when they signed him. He was a top prospect at one point. Some fans, including yourself, were a big fan of his game, maybe even better than William Nylander because of the goal-scoring ability. Now, ultimately, that hasn't translated to the NHL level yet, but clearly there's some stuff there that could definitely translate. And I don't know, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with him. And ultimately, I just absolutely love the contract, and you can see here, although the Marlies don't provide guaranteed route to the NHL, the team often helps veterans looking to revive their career within the Leafs system. Alex will likely be participating and practicing with the Leafs veterans and prospects in Toronto in the coming weeks. And again, this is not calling Alex Nylander a veteran. It's saying that the Leafs have tons of veterans who can help William Nylander, or Alex Nylander, and William Nylander being one of those prospects, grow into the players. There's a lot of things between the lines here that make a ton of sense.
Yeah, I love the signing, right? Like you said, like the low risk for the Leafs, and the fact that he can come in and, like I keep saying, use the resources that the Leafs have as an organization and play alongside his brother. And when you talk about his offensive game, like the shot is there, the speed is there. He's an underrated playmaker, I think, even at the NHL level. So there's lots to like offensively. It's the rest of his game, and coaches can't trust this player. That's a big thing for him, right? And why he hasn't really worked out in the NHL. A lot of teams could use him for goal scoring, sure. But they're bottom feeder teams. Maybe you wanted to come here and get a better opportunity and learn to, round out his game and play on a contender, because a lot of people laugh, but the fact of the matter is the Leafs are in the mix every year, right? So I think it had more to do with playing with his brother and using the Leafs organization to better his career. So it's going to be interesting to watch for sure. And like you mentioned too, if you plug this guy into the bottom six, he can get you goal scoring. The Leafs have had a problem with depth scoring, right? He can score goals, and he scored at almost half a point a game pace last year. I think it was actually very small sample size. Again, he was playing in the AHL, but he's put up decent numbers, at least in goal scoring, everywhere he's gone. So he can score. He can put the puck in the net. So if you ever need somebody, to do it in the bottom six, he's a better option than almost anyone that the Leafs have in the bottom six right now, I'd argue, right? Like, at least in that department, but the rest of the game is suffering. So he's going to work on that with the Leafs, I'm sure. So that's going to be exciting to watch. And he's only 26. So down the road, maybe he can become a very effective player for the Leafs.
Yeah, you can see in the AHL and his prospect kind of games before he came up to the NHL. In 330 games, he scored a total of 210 points in different stints with a bunch of different teams. 26-year-old has bounced up and down the minors regularly and around a handful of teams during his career. It's a recipe for inconsistent performances and could be one of the main reasons why Nylander hasn't played up to expectations when he was selected 8th overall 8 years ago in 2016. Kind of lends into the credits to the fact that that's probably why, and maybe that's a reason that he signed here. Get some stability. He's familiar with the players, at least William Nylander. I'm sure he's met some of the other players as well, just because it's his brother in the offseason while training. And now he has some comfortability, and maybe that can translate. That comfortability can translate to some big years, hopefully, to come for him. But let us know in the comments, do you think the Maple Leafs robbed the NHL with this deal, and do you think that William Nylander and Alex Nylander are going to be a potential duo going forward for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Let us know.